I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd notice someone else's hands. But there I was, standing on the dock at 5:30 in the morning, watching Marcus tie off his fishing boat, and all I could think about was how his fingers moved with such quiet confidence through the rope work. It was early June, and the lake was still wrapped in that silvery pre-dawn mist that makes everything feel like you're standing inside a dream. I'd moved to this small town in northern Minnesota 3 months earlier, running from a life in Chicago that had started to feel like wearing someone else's clothes. I was 28, recently out, and working remotely for a tech company that didn't care where I lived as long as I met my deadlines. My therapist had suggested I needed space to figure out who I was without the noise of the city, without my family's expectations, without the ghost of my ex-girlfriend following me through every familiar street. The rental cabin came furnished with exactly one neighbor, Marcus Chen, who lived in the house next door and apparently spent every free moment on the water. I'd seen him from my kitchen window dozens of times, loading gear into his truck at ungodly hours, returning at sunset with coolers and that particular kind of tiredness that comes from a good day outdoors. We'd exchanged waves, the occasional nod, but never actual words until the morning he knocked on my door holding a thermos of coffee and asking if I wanted to learn how to fish. I should mention that I knew absolutely nothing about fishing. Growing up in the suburbs of Detroit, my family's idea of outdoor recreation was driving to the mall with the windows down. But something about the way Marcus asked, casual but hopeful, made me say yes before my brain could catalog all the reasons this was a terrible idea. I didn't own appropriate clothes. I'd probably get seasick. I barely knew this man. But I said yes anyway, and that's how I found myself on the dock that morning, trying not to stare at his hands. The boat was beautiful in that way that practical things sometimes are. It wasn't fancy, just a well-maintained aluminum fishing boat with a small outboard motor, but Marcus clearly loved it. He ran his palm along the side as we approached, the way you'd touch something precious. That's when I noticed the name painted on the hull in neat dark blue letters. Elliot. My middle name is Elliot. My full name is James Elliot Porter, though I've gone by Jamie since college. Nobody calls me Elliot. Nobody even knows it's my middle name unless they've seen my driver's license or my tax returns. I stared at those letters, feeling something strange and electric move through my chest. "Nice name for a boat," I said, trying to sound casual. Marcus glanced at me, then away, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Yeah, I thought so too. He didn't explain and I didn't push. We climbed into the boat and he showed me where to sit, how to hold on as we pulled away from the dock. The motor hummed to life, and suddenly we were moving across the water, cutting through that morning mist like we were the only two people in the world. The thing about fishing, I learned that day, is that it's mostly about patience and quiet. Marcus taught me how to bait a hook, how to cast without tangling the line, how to feel for that subtle tug that means something's interested. We didn't talk much at first. The silence felt comfortable, broken only by the lap of water against the hull and the occasional call of a loon somewhere in the distance. But as the sun climbed higher and burned away the mist, we started talking. Small things at first. He asked what brought me to Minnesota, and I gave him the sanitized version, the one about needing a change of pace and the beauty of the North Woods. He told me he'd grown up in Seattle, moved here 5 years ago after his partner died. The way he said it, matter of fact, but with this underlying current of old grief, made me understand that we were both here for the same reason. We were both trying to figure out how to be ourselves again. His name was David, Marcus said, eyes on his fishing line. Lung cancer. He was 42. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. It's been 5 years. Some days it feels like yesterday. Some days it feels like a different lifetime. He reeled in his line slowly. You get used to it, the missing. It becomes part of you. I wanted to tell him that I understood, that I was also carrying around the weight of a life I'd left behind, even if my loss was different. But the words stuck in my throat, so instead I asked, "Is that why you fish? To deal with it?" Marcus considered this, his dark eyes scanning the water. I fish because it's the only time my brain shuts up. Out here, there's just this. He gestured at the lake, the sky, the trees crowding the shoreline. It's honest. The fish don't care about your past or your future. They just care if you're patient enough to wait for them. We caught 3 bass that morning, and Marcus threw them all back. He said he didn't fish for the catching, he fished for the being. I didn't fully understand what he meant until the third time we went out together, which happened the following week, and then the week after that. It became our routine. Wednesday mornings at dawn, Marcus would knock on my door with coffee, and we'd spend 3 or 4 hours on the water, talking or not talking, casting lines and watching the world wake up around us. I started to notice things about him. The way he always checked the weather twice before we went out, cautious but not fearful. How he hummed under his breath when he was concentrating, usually old rock songs from the 70s. The careful way he handled every fish we caught, respectful, almost reverent. And his hands, always his hands, capable and gentle in equal measure. By the 4th week, I'd stopped pretending this was just about fishing. I was falling for him in that slow, terrifying way that happens when you're not looking for it. Every Wednesday I told myself I'd keep my distance, maintain appropriate boundaries, protect the friendship we were building. And every Wednesday I found myself leaning a little closer when he showed me a new knot, laughing a little too hard at his terrible jokes, staying on the water longer than we'd planned because I didn't want the morning to end. The boat's name haunted me. Elliot. It couldn't be a coincidence. But how would Marcus even know my middle name? I'd introduced myself as Jamie. My mailbox said J. Porter. There was no reason he should know. I finally asked him about it on a morning in early July. We'd been out for 2 hours and the fishing was slow, which meant we'd spent most of the time just drifting and talking. Marcus had been telling me about David, how they'd met at a bookstore in Seattle, both reaching for the same copy of a Cormac McCarthy novel. The story was sweet and sad, and it made my chest ache with something I couldn't quite name. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure." "The boat's name, Elliot. Where'd it come from?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the side of the boat. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than usual. "You really want to know?" "Yeah, I do." He set down his fishing rod and turned to face me fully. "I saw your mail once, back in April, before we'd met. The wind had blown some envelopes from your mailbox, and I picked them up to bring them over. One was from your bank, and it had your full name, James Elliot Porter." He paused, looking almost embarrassed. I liked the sound of it. Elliot. It felt right for a boat. My heart was doing something complicated in my chest. "You named your boat after my middle name before we even met?" "I know how it sounds," Marcus said quickly. "It's weird, right? I don't know. I'd been planning to name the boat for months, and I couldn't find anything that felt right. Then I saw your name, and something clicked. I told myself it was just a name I liked, nothing more. But then we started fishing together, and every time I looked at the name on the hull, I thought about you." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as nervousness. "I probably should have told you sooner." I didn't know what to say. My brain was trying to process the implications, the timeline, the sheer vulnerability of what he'd just admitted. He'd been thinking about me, in some way, since before we'd spoken. He'd painted my name on his boat. "I'm not freaked out," I finally managed. I'm surprised." Good surprised or bad surprised? I don't know yet. We sat with that honesty between us, the boat rocking gently on the water. A fish jumped somewhere off to our left, breaking the surface with a splash, and we both turned to look, grateful for the distraction. "I should tell you something too," I heard myself say. "I didn't move here just for a change of pace. I moved here because I came out last year, and it imploded my entire life. My family stopped talking to me. My girlfriend of 6 years, who I'd been planning to marry, obviously that ended. My friends divided themselves into camps, and I realized I didn't know who I was without all these roles I'd been playing. Dutiful son, good boyfriend, straight guy. I needed to figure out who Jamie actually is when he's not pretending to be someone else." Marcus nodded slowly. "And have you? Figured it out?" "I'm starting to," I said. "Being out here helps. Being with you helps." The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning. Marcus's expression shifted, something opening up in his face. He reached across the small space between us and took my hand, his palm warm and rough with calluses. We sat like that for a while, holding hands in a fishing boat named Elliot, and I felt more myself than I had in years. We didn't kiss that day. We didn't need to. The hand-holding was enough, a promise of something building between us, slow and steady, like the way he'd taught me to reel in a fish. Don't rush it, he always said. Let it come to you. Over the next few weeks, our Wednesdays expanded. We started having dinner together after fishing, taking turns cooking at each other's cabins. Marcus made incredible stir-fry, and I discovered I was pretty good at pasta. We watched movies on his couch, our shoulders touching, then our hands, then eventually his arm around me and my head against his chest. We talked about everything. His childhood in Seattle, my complicated relationship with my parents, his years with David, my fear that I'd wasted my 20s living a lie. You didn't waste anything, Marcus said one night, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. You were doing what you needed to do to survive. There's no shame in that. It feels like shame, I admitted, like I was a coward. You weren't a coward, you were scared. There's a difference. He tilted my chin up so I had to look at him. And you're here now. You're living your truth now. That takes more courage than most people ever manage. I kissed him then, finally, and it felt like coming home. His lips were soft, his hands gentle as they cupped my face. We took our time, learning each other, and when we finally pulled apart, we were both smiling. I've wanted to do that for weeks, I whispered. I know, Marcus said. I could tell. You're not subtle when you stare at my hands. I laughed, embarrassed, but not really. They're nice hands. They're just hands, Jamie. They're your hands. That makes them special. We spent that night together, and it was everything first times should be. Tender and awkward and perfect. Marcus was patient with my nervousness, my fumbling inexperience with male bodies. He showed me what he liked, asked me what I wanted, made me feel safe enough to explore and discover. Afterward, lying in his bed with the windows open and the sound of the lake drifting in, I felt a peace I hadn't known I was searching for. Tell me about the name again, I said, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Why Elliot, really? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his fingers running through my hair. Honestly, when I saw your full name, something in me recognized it, like I'd been waiting for you without knowing it. I know that sounds ridiculous. It doesn't, I said. It sounds perfect. As summer deepened, we fell into a rhythm. Wednesday morning fishing became every other day fishing. Separate cabins became mostly staying at his place. My remote work schedule flexed around our time on the water. I started to understand what Marcus meant about fishing being honest. Out there, with just the two of us in the lake and the sky, I couldn't hide from myself. I couldn't pretend or perform. I could just be Jamie, learning to love this quiet man who'd named his boat after a name he'd seen on an envelope. We had our first real fight in August. I'd gotten a call from my mother, the first time she'd reached out since I'd come out. She wanted me to come home for my sister's wedding, but only if I came alone, only if I didn't make a scene. I'd told her no, that Marcus was part of my life now, and she'd hung up on me. I was furious and hurt and taking it out on Marcus, snapping at him over small things, withdrawing into myself. He finally confronted me one evening after I'd been particularly cold. Talk to me, he said. What's going on? Nothing, I'm fine. You're not fine. You've barely looked at me in 3 days. I wanted to keep denying it, but the look on his face stopped me. He wasn't angry, just worried and sad, and I realized I was doing to him what had been done to me, shutting him out, making him guess at my pain. So I told him everything, about my mother's call, about feeling caught between two worlds, about my fear that I'd never be fully accepted by my family, that I'd always be the disappointment, the one who couldn't just be normal. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when I was done, he pulled me into his arms. Your family's loss is my gain, he said quietly. I know that doesn't make it hurt less, but Jamie, you are so loved, by me, completely, just as you are. I cried then, really cried, for the first time since leaving Chicago. Marcus held me through it, his steady presence anchoring me. When the tears finally stopped, I felt lighter, like I'd set down something heavy I'd been carrying for too long. I love you too, I said. I should have said it before. You just did. That's what matters. September brought the first hints of fall, the leaves starting to turn, the morning air carrying a chill that meant summer was ending. I'd been in Minnesota for 6 months, and my remote work contract was coming up for renewal. I had a choice to make. I could renew and stay, making this life permanent, or I could move on, keep searching for whatever it was I thought I needed. I didn't realize Marcus was worried about this until I found him sitting on the dock one evening, staring out at the water with an expression I'd learned to recognize as anxiety. "Hey," I said, sitting down next to him. "What's wrong?" "Your contract ends next month." "Yeah, it does." "Are you renewing?" I looked at him, at this man who'd taught me patience and honesty and how to be gentle with myself. "Do you want me to?" "That's not fair," Marcus said. "This has to be your choice." "It is my choice, and I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this life." I took his hand. "I already sent in my renewal paperwork last week. I just hadn't told you yet because I wanted to surprise you." The relief on his face was immediate and profound. He pulled me close, kissing me hard. "You scared me," he said against my lips. "I thought you might leave." "I'm not going anywhere. This is home now. Your home." We sat on the dock until the stars came out, making plans for the fall and winter. Marcus wanted to teach me ice fishing. I wanted to learn how to cook his grandmother's recipes. We talked about maybe moving in together officially, combining our spaces, building something permanent. "I never thought I'd have this again," Marcus admitted. "After David, I figured that was it, one great love per lifetime. And now? Now I know I was wrong. Love isn't finite. It's not something you use up." He squeezed my hand. "I love David. I'll always love David. But I love you too, differently but just as deeply. You taught me that it's possible to honor the past and still build a future." I understood what he meant. I'd loved Sarah, my ex-girlfriend, in the way you love someone when you're trying to be who you think you should be. But loving Marcus was different. It was loving someone while being fully myself, no performance, no pretending. It was honest in the way fishing was honest, patient and present and real. We went out on the boat one last time before the weather turned too cold, just the two of us in the early morning mist. I'd gotten pretty good at fishing by then, could tie most of the knots Marcus had taught me, could read the water and know where the fish might be hiding. But my favorite part was still just being there with him, watching his hands work the line, listening to him hum those old rock songs. "Thank you," I said as we drifted near the center of the lake. "For what?" "For the boat name. For seeing something in me before I even saw it in myself. For being patient while I figured things out. For teaching me that it's okay to be exactly who I am." Marcus smiled, that soft smile I'd fallen in love with. "Thank you for saying yes that first morning. For taking a chance on fishing with a stranger. For staying." I looked at the name painted on the hull. Elliot. My middle name, my secret name, the name nobody used. Except now it was the name of this boat, this vessel that carried us out into the honest space of the lake every week. It was the name that had brought us together, a small coincidence that turned into something beautiful. "I'll always say yes to you," I told Marcus. "To this. To us." He kissed me then, gentle and sure, and I tasted coffee and morning air and the promise of all our tomorrows. The boat rocked beneath us, steady and true, carrying us forward into whatever came next. Later, when people ask me how I knew Marcus was the one, I tell them about the boat, about how he named it after a part of me I'd kept hidden, about how he saw me before he even knew me, about how sometimes love finds you in the quietest moments, in the space between dawn and daylight, in the patient waiting that fishing teaches you. I tell them that home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it's a boat named Elliot, carrying you across the water toward a life you didn't know you were allowed to want. And every Wednesday morning, when Marcus knocks on my door with coffee and that hopeful smile, I say yes. I'll always say yes. Total_char_count, 23,847.